Good evening. We'll call to order the planning and zoning meeting for December 11th. Everybody has the agenda in front of them. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Don't move.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it. The agenda is approved. Next on the list is to approve the November 13th minutes from the Planning and Zoning Comprehensive Plan work session. I think we've all had a chance to review them. I'm not sure if you have, Jonathan. But if does anybody have any comments on the minutes from the Planning and Zoning meeting of November 13th?
Chairman, I need to abstain from any votes. So I was.
You weren't there. Okay. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve the minutes.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it. The minutes are approved from November 13th meeting. Next on the agenda, I'd like to introduce, as you know, we've had a vacancy or two off and on over the last couple of years, but we have a new member, Jonathan Evans, who's here to the Planning Commission. If you'd like to say a few words and tell us a little bit about yourself, and then I'm going to ask that we all just give a little bit of our own background so Jonathan understands how we got here and what our background is.
Yeah, sure. Happy to be here. My wife and I and our two kids moved here in February 2017. We love living here so far, which is one of the main reasons that I wanted to join this, to help contribute to their future here. We plan on being here for a long time, and I'd like to help in any way I can to help the town out. I work at the Brandywine Power Plant. I came from a power plant in Delaware, so I have an electronics background. I have an associate's in electronics. I have a 6-year-old boy and a 2-year-old girl. You'll see us around at the town events. We go to pretty much everything we can. The Labor Day, Memorial Day, all that stuff. So I'm looking forward to working with these guys and just helping out. I'll probably have a lot of questions, but I'm excited. So thanks.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Hi, Jonathan. Welcome.
Thanks.
I am the second newest now that you're here, so I'm really glad you're here. I got here in June, and I've been working with the Walkable Community Advisory for over a year now, and that's how I ended up in planning and zoning. Really excited about improving our amenities around town, and that is why I am here. 4 kids and one in each of the schools that all your kids will be going to.
Larry?
Larry Brown. I've been in Chesapeake since 2000. I lived down near Neptune. Retired more or less about 3 or 4 years ago.
Welcome aboard, Jonathan. I'm Bob Gray. I've been a resident of the town for 15 years, down on B Street, down off the boardwalk. My background is I'm a retired attorney. I have fairly extensive background in planning and zoning issues. I've represented developers, citizens, and the county governments at the county level, the Planning Commission level, the Board of Appeals level. So I needed to get back into contributing back. So I'm here, something like that.
I'm Jeff Foltz. I'm the chairman of the Planning and Zoning, although I don't know how long I've been chairman. I've been on the commission for almost 5 years. I participated on the other side of the bench here back in the day, back when we did a comprehensive plan in the early 2000s. I've been in town since 2000 as a resident. Live over on 28th Street. Larry left out one of the important details of his background. We're both former Navy folks. So we got a little bit of a kinship over on this side with our Navy background, and both destroyer guys.
For me, just 32 years.
So I spent time in the Navy as a ship driver and then a CB doing construction. And then that's kind of how I do practice construction management for the government on the outside. And it's kind of what I've done for the last lots of years. And I got probably more involved in town stuff working with Seabox with the John Bacon and the Oyster Cultivation Society. And that was kind of my biggest foray into town. And then I started just getting a little more involved here and ended up, that was another, like you said, a good way to contribute. So with that, welcome aboard. We're glad to have you. The next item of business is Chris and I talked, there were some challenges just from a planning perspective coming up with as we moved into next year. And so what we were proposing is that we move the meeting from the second Wednesday of the month to the fourth Wednesday of the month. I think I had confirmation from everybody that would be okay. So I just want to confirm that that's all right.
I can do it with the exception I've already have out-of-state trips planned for February and March.
Okay. No issues.
And my only concern would be next December 23rd. I'm not sure I'll make it then.
You can make an adjustment. So with that being said, we'll, and we did talk to town council and the staff here just to make sure there weren't any conflicts of any expectations they had as far as us preceding their town council meeting or anything. And there was no objection to us moving it to the 4th. So, Chris, I'm going to turn it over to you for the next item, which is to review request to revise Section 2, Block S of the townhouse section of Richfield Station. If you want to introduce that and talk us through it.
Sure. This is the last section of the townhouse community, Richfield Station, at the end of Crestview Lane. There are 48 units yet to be constructed, although some of the infrastructure is installed already and the grading has started. The applicant has been working with the town staff, town attorney, town engineer, and town manager to move forward with the public works agreement and all the various things that get knitted together before a project is officially signed off on. And as part of that, those deliberations, the applicant has proposed switching out the municipal pump station, which would be located in this project, for 48 separate grinder pumps. As I mentioned in the staff report, a grinder pump is a small pumping unit that creates kind of a slurry of wastewater and injects it into the municipal system. So it operates in the same way as a pump station, a bigger pump station, but on an individual basis. The town has experience with both grinder pumps and pump stations in Richfield Station, so this proposal is not particularly new to the town. And the removal of the infrastructure, the pump station and all that, frees up space that could be devoted to open space, recreation, small park, right in the midst of that townhouse community. So that is the question before you. We thought, the entire town staff, I thought it was best to bring it to you as planning commission for your review and approval, even though one might conclude it's very kind of detailed engineering type of consideration. We still thought you were the approving authority and your authority continues with the project. So we wanted to bring it to you. But Paul Woodburn is here tonight as the town engineer who has the expertise in this area. And I hope that you'll consider his input on this matter.
Paul, do you have anything you want to add?
I can. Good evening, Paul Woodburn, town engineer. We implemented this, as Chris said, this system down at Chesapeake Station, or Chesapeake Village, Chesapeake Station. I always get them mixed up. The system works well. The only thing, like with that one, that we had asked for is that there be a backup generator, a propane backup generator with each system, so that we don't get the calls when the power goes out that the town needs to come turn on their power. Basically, each house will have their own grinder pump system with a backup generator that will pump to the gravity system, which is in Crestview Lane, it's currently installed. It's a pretty simple system, pretty simple process. We do a lot of them all over the state. I do a lot of them, but I know we have one here and it works well. The good side is for the town is we won't have another pump station to maintain, which is very expensive, has a lot of problems, a lot of maintenance, takes a lot of town staff to keep up with the pump station. There's a lot of regulatory, mandatory things that the town has to do to keep up with the pump station. We have to keep backup pumps on hand up at the Public Works building. So there's a lot that goes at a pump station. So from the town's perspective, I like it just because we don't have that to worry about. Middle of the night, pumps go down, clogs. We have to deal with it. We don't have to do that with this. So I think it's very beneficial, and the town will get a small little pocket park, or the community will, really. I think it's HOA, Chris, area.
It's what's being proposed, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So
Won't you have similar clogging midnight calls for a bunch of individual stations?
well, these are private, right?
Right.
So the homeowner will have their own system, and they'll have to call plumber. I mean, we don't have these problems. I don't hear these problems. They are private. So they'll have a plumber they'll have to call, just like if you clogged your own gravity line. But it has a grinder pump. It's a grinder pump system.
Yeah, I have a
So-
grinder pump on a
Yeah.
piece of my property in Holland Point.
Mm-hmm.
And when there's a problem, you call the county and they send somebody out to fix it. But we won't provide that service.
I would not recommend that the town take that on, no.
Well,
But
it's-
I can't say that they
it's
won't.
shifting the burden to the homeowner.
Correct.
And
So
what's
the homeowner would have to maintain their line anyway. Even if it was a gravity line, they would still maintain from their house out to the clean out. In this situation, it'll be a pump as well, just like they have in Chesapeake Station.
are there any elevation issues with the grinder pumps? I mean, if you have a pumping station, it can pump uphill.
Right. So these do the same. Right.
So are there any elevation issues associated with this?
No.
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 And what size generator are the
They're very
homeowners going to have
small.
to maintain?
I mean, you can go look at them if they're about this big. A little propane generator.
It's a single purpose?
Yeah, it's for a 120 volt plug. I mean, it's not much. It doesn't take a whole lot. It's just a
2,000
small-
watts, 20,000 watts?
No, no. I mean, you're talking like 2 horsepower pumps that are in these grinders. They're not. It's not a lot of pressure they have to push to push it out. I mean, you're talking like 1-inch lines.
And each homeowner will have to have a propane tank
That's correct.
and maintain that.
They would have to keep it filled and maintained. And, I'm sure they'll option to say, hey, I'd like to get a bigger generator and run my whole house. I mean, there's that option. I know some did take that on at Chesapeake Station. But they would at least have to be sized for the pump station itself.
Are you saying Chesapeake Station, the townhouse development has, or the townhouses in Chesapeake
The
Station? Or are you talking about
single-family houses.
Chesapeake Village?
The single family.
In Chesapeake Village
Yeah, in Village.
Station?
Oh, I'm
Okay.
sorry, Chesapeake Village.
Yeah,
specific-
Yeah, so that's my community.
I
sorry.
apologize. Yes, Village.
Okay, so I know not everyone has one of these grinders there.
Correct.
So would all 48 units need one of these?
Yes. Well, I think some of them are ejectors. Am I correct? Yeah, some of them. So let me explain. Some of them are whole house pumps and some of them are ejectors. In other words, the first 2 stories of the structure will gravity, and the basement, if they have a washer and dryer or a bathroom, would have a pump inside the house.
That'll be determined by the builder.
What's that?
Like, so,
No, they have them listed on the plans they
Okay.
provided.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and another thing in Chesapeake Village is when there is a problem that the electricity can't get to the pumps, if it fills up too high, the alarms go off. And so,
Is that because their backup
yes.
generators aren't working?
Yes, and it does happen. So just something to consider, 48 of those.
They really
Might
should
be
get a
interesting.
maintenance program on their generator.
Yeah, I mean,
But yeah,
it doesn't happen often, but so that's why I'm curious how many of these are in Chesapeake Village.
I don't remember. So there's a portion that are on it, and there's a portion that gravity to the pump station.
Right,
Maybe half. I'm just guessing at the number
Okay.
in my head.
In Holland Point, there is no, every home in Holland Point has a grinder.
okay,
So we're talking several hundred,
okay.
just for comparison.
And you feel like
Good
that
point.
works fine, it's not,
Yeah, I haven't heard
Conditions and
from the
weather
neighbors up
events or-
there that there's any issues with it.
I have a couple comments and questions. First one was already answered by Paul, and dealing with the park. The note that we got from Chris said that the shrubs were non-invasive. I wanted to make sure that the trees were non-invasive species, because that, when you begin to mix non-invasive and invasive, or non-invasives and native plants, you disturb the ecological balance between the insects, birds, and the plants and all that. So I was assured that what Paul had told me are not on my list of invasive trees. So thank you.
Okay.
The other issue is one that I've raised when we have any sort of lighting issue, and that's the issue of light pollution, whether the lighting in the pocket park are going to be the lights that do not reflect up and
Full
cause the light
cutoff, they
pollution.
call them.
Yeah, I forget what the name.
Full cutoff.
Yeah, so that we don't have the more light pollution as a result of that.
Right.
We could have that on a note saying that they be all directed down. And this I'm going to blame on my profession, because settlement attorneys don't necessarily read plats and read covenants and tell their clients what's in the plats and what's in the covenants. I'm concerned that 2 or 3 property owners down the line are going to be unaware of their obligation to maintain the pumps. And I'm not sure what we as a town can do, because that is really the obligation of the settlement attorney to make sure that their clients are aware of that. And that's a fault of my profession for being sloppy in their work. But that, I see that as a potential issue on that. And the last point that I would like to get some assurance on, because we're now creating a pocket park to be maintained by the homeowners association, whether they are aware of that and have concurred that they're willing to accept the maintenance responsibilities for that pocket park. It's going to be relatively minimal in terms of trash pickup, mowing the grass, maintaining the benches, and that type of thing. Have we heard back from have we gotten anything from the HOA on that?
No, we haven't. We haven't presented this as a concept to them.
Okay.
the HOA's here, right?
So the question is, I would like to see that as a condition, so that we are not imposing an additional burden on the homeowners association that they're not willing to accept.
I would be interested to hear. I guess my concern is we just had the last 2 meetings, and it's written in it, and I don't know if it matters to the council or people that put this together, but it does say that everything will be hooked to a municipal pump. So I am curious to know what the
So I think it's that it will,
going consensus of the council is.
I think that it will connect to the system, not necessarily a pump station. That any discharge will make its way to our treatment plant.
Well, eventually it does get pumped.
No, I know. It's
Yeah.
just section 8.5 says it will be
I'm sorry, what
lifted
are you
by a
reading?
town-approved pump station. So
What are
you're
you reading,
considering
Laura?
each individual pump, grinder pump, a town-approved pump station?
Or what are you reading?
I'm reading the
New,
water and sewer manual that we
The-
reviewed the last two
Water and sewer
meetings.
manual, okay.
Is that the proposed water and sewer manual?
yes.
Yes.
So it's not adopted yet.
We weren't sure if they
But
adopted.
it's-
We weren't
it's
sure if
the
they adopted it.
intent.
No, I'm just saying they hadn't adopted it.
Okay.
Right.
It's close.
I'd like to follow their intent. So if there's no issue and nobody has an issue with it, I'm not an engineer.
But Paul, are you saying
Somebody
that
did
this,
intend for this to happen.
do
I'm
you
not sure
know,
what you read in the context and all that. I can't comment on that. I don't know.
do you know if this proposal is consistent with the new sewer manual?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, everything doesn't pump in the town. There's many, many houses that do pump in the town now. And there's a lot of gravity. Eventually, much of the town does pump through a pump station, not all of it. But yes, it fully meets the intent of the ordinance as it is now and will be adopted soon, I hope.
Do we have any, you talked about needing to have propane for the generators, or do we specify any kind of size of the propane tank? Is there a minimum size that they're required to have, or how long would it operate? I mean,
Yeah, so we specified the type of grinder pit and the propane.
how long of an outage could
size.
we endure?
Well, we're trying to be reasonable about
Uh-huh.
it, but it doesn't take a whole lot to run those. They'll
Right.
run 24 hours almost on just that
Okay.
alone. So, and it doesn't run except when it fills. They're called environmental one stations. They're top of the line. We're going to make sure that they put in, what we're asking them to do, so that we're going to give the customer the best product.
Do they work on some kind of a float, like
Yeah,
they fill up, then the float switch kicks on, and they pump it down, and
it's got a
then
sensor.
okay.
Yeah, they're a little better than the old float, but a little
That's what I'm
sensor.
going
Yeah,
back to my
but
old
it's
Navy
the same
days.
thing.
I'm just
It's the same thing. It's just
Okay.
a little more high tech and a little more reliable.
I'm dating myself.
Yeah. But yeah, so it has an original little kick on, and then has an emergency, which I know you said you've heard or seen from lack of maintenance, maybe, or it could be a trip. Who knows?
So the Heritage is 100 houses? Is that right? 100 units?
70 some.
It's short of
70?
100.
And what will they be using?
So the first phase is on the whole house grinders, and the remaining will be on a pump station.
Okay, and
So 30 and 40 maybe, or something like that. Just guessing it. Chris may know the exact numbers. I don't remember.
so what I'm understanding is that from your perspective, it's neither here nor there which is used regarding
Correct.
risk, regarding, quality of life for the residents and homeowners and staff in the town. I mean,
Well, it's
I don't
like-
know how to weigh this.
Right. So it's like anything. If you don't pay attention to it and don't do anything and don't maintain it like your car, you know what's going to happen.
Right?
So the original proposal was a pump station by the town, which basically was from here to that wall from 2 townhouses. And they smell, they make noise. It's not the best for those 2 homeowners for sure.
Right?
Lot of risk on the town with the pump station, a lot of cost for the town, and everybody in town pays, not just those residents.
Mhm.
Versus the whole house pump, which is each homeowner is going to maintain and pay for in perpetuity their
Mhm.
little grinder pump.
And to Larry's point, they should know that's, they should be aware of that when they purchase that property. And that's probably one of their decision points is they evaluate whether or not that's the house I want to buy or look elsewhere. And I guess in my mind, developers weigh in that in some regards, because if he doesn't think if it was so intrusive or that much of a concern, he would be, if he thought it wasn't going to be a viable solution, he would feel at risk that he won't have buyers for those townhouses. They've obviously sold townhouses with similar systems before, and he's comfortable providing them and thinking that that the market will be viable for those.
Well, I mean, this is not a new
Right,
technology.
right.
I'm not
No, no,
trying to sell the technology.
Right.
I don't have nothing in this. It's just that the homeowner, like if you buy a house, I live in Huntingtown, I'm on a septic system. I don't have a gravity that goes to a town system. I have to maintain it. I have to call and get it pumped out every year. My line clogged up because I didn't maintain it. It backed up in my basement. I mean,
you're dying.
that was my fault. I should have paid attention, but
Okay.
So that's the bottom line, is that each individual homeowner will have to maintain their system, but these are top of the line systems, and we put them in all over the place.
I think I would echo Bob's concern of just making sure, if we were to move forward with this, I'd want to make sure. Yeah, I guess if we were to require to create that community park green space, that homeowners association is willing to take that on. If they didn't, who does that responsibility fall to?
Well, there are a number of other open spaces in that
Right.
townhouse community, and it's all designated HOA.
Okay,
The distinction here is that there's 2 benches
okay,
and a fence that would enclose it. The vegetation is there, just like there's vegetation and trees in each of the other.
have to be landscaped.
So the distinction is
maintained.
that there's a little bit of improvement in it that would in fact have to be maintained at some point and managed. But no trash facilities, or actually no lights are proposed in this area either. It's just it's delineating what would normally be just regular open space to create a more sort of a safe zone for tot lots, and really is respecting the comments and considerations you've made in previous meetings.
This kind of backs up back to where the trailhead.
No, it's on the opposite side
On
of
the
the
opposite side,
trailhead.
okay.
Yes.
So speaking of the trailhead, I haven't seen these plans. But does the trailhead connect with some plans in that area of Richfield Station?
No, and it's not really a trailhead so much as the trail passes through this section of Crestview Lane on the way up and out of Richfield Station. So it's at this point where the trail leaves the forest and the marshes behind and becomes part of the network of streets.
It is shown on the plat.
Yes. Yes.
Actually, the sidewalk on the east
So that'll
side.
all meet in some kind of
Oh, yeah.
cohesive
Yeah,
way. That's not on this topic, but
right. It
Thought I'd bring it
does.
up.
It becomes the sidewalk, and then, as Chris said, goes out.
So as you come up that trail, as you work your way through, instead of passing past the pump station, you're
You'll be on the
passing
sidewalk.
through that little.
Actually, it'll be on the other side of the road. for
Yeah,
the
yeah,
person
but-
walking. Yeah.
At a distance of 45 feet or so.
Yeah, but that's what I mean.
Yeah,
It's-
right. You'll be able to see it on the other side of
Right.
the small parking
Okay.
facility.
Any other comments?
I move that we,
Oh, Mr.
do we
before
need
you
a
move-
motion to accept?
Just, I wanted to, before you made a motion, it was our recommendation, Paul and I, that Paul's letter, those points set forth in his letter, which is attached to your staff memo, form the conditions that you would place. And of course, the applicant is here too, Mr. Repke, and it's represented by his attorney, Mr. Devlin, too. And they certainly should have an opportunity to speak on the
Okay.
question.
All right.
I have one more question. So I can't remember which month, but I witnessed the planning and zoning meeting where we approved the other side of Richfield Station. I assume it's the same developer. The end of a cul-de-sac in Richfield Station. With the street.
How long ago was this?
This was about 4 months ago, maybe, or maybe it could have been even in November. No, it was probably in February. It was another revision to Richfield Station, and within that revision, there was an agreement to complete part of the railway trail. Do you recall that?
No. I don't recall that meeting, or were you on the,
I was in the audience.
it was a year ago. 2018. The
It's
applicant
not
was,
a year ago. It was
Yeah.
since I've been on the WCAG.
They do have to build a part of it as part of this. Could that be it,
Right.
maybe?
I guess my question was, did that ever get on paper? And if not, if we're looking for different things, we should approve it when it gets
it's
on
constructed
paper.
now. The trail is constructed now. And when they build the sidewalk, that would be the hard surface of it. So the trail is there. And you
Right.
could, if you walk down Crestview Lane beyond where it's paved, within a short distance, you can access the trail.
You don't recall the area of Richfield Station that I'm speaking of? It's the only other section that's been revised, and it's going to have more plats approved.
Now, all the plats have already been approved
Right?
for Richfield
Well,
Station.
Stream walk, was that?
Yes, that would be it.
There's not a trail, maybe.
There
you're
was an
referring to-
agreement.
there's a-
I heard
there's a
it.
Trail, there's a possible extension on the backside of that.
That wasn't on the planning commission's agenda for years.
recall it.
Maybe 3 or 4 years ago it was on the.
I don't recall
I
anything
think,
since I've been.
okay, I'll maybe look at the YouTube and see if I can remember, but the
But
answer is no, that never got on paper. Is
But
that correct?
I think what you're saying is correct, that there
Right.
was discussion when Streamwalk came through that the trail, we would do something with the trail, but that was years ago
No, this was
that I
recently.
remember.
Well, I
Okay.
guess my point is, if we're going to approve something conditionally, this is a process question since I'm new, those plats were approved conditionally. I do remember that. They were approved on the condition that ABC happened. Charlie Fink was here, and I think he asked the question, could they be approved in this manner? And the answer was yes, and that's how they were approved. So then, say that happened, what happens next?
Maybe even the applicant, the developer could speak to this, because if it was his project, he would obviously remember. But you may be referring to this particular section, the same section, but it was a year ago. It was November 2018 that the applicant came in with some revisions to the project. And it was discussed quite a bit about the trail. And the planning commission wanted assurance that in fact the trail was going to be completed. And the trail is there. But
And I think there was some
we talked
concern about
the
when it
connection.
would be built out also, and the length of time it was taken because the final paving wasn't done in the back, and some of the work with the clean outs, and having some assurances that we got that we were heavily involved, that the town was heavily involved in testing and acceptance of those storm lines.
That's this section.
And I remember a lengthy discussion about that, of making sure we had heavy oversight and involvement, and Jay talked about it too, of that we would be involved in the testing acceptance, because the homeowners association was concerned about not getting stuck with culverts that were clogged up at the end of the construction period. And we hadn't had the final paving in that section because the final section wasn't built out. And we had a lot of discussion about making sure we had town involvement prior to accepting that final build out. I do remember those discussions. But it wasn't plat related issues.
Right. And the applicant was before you because they were proposing to move away from a condo regime in
Right.
which there was condo owning each block.
And we had that
And
private
to fee
property, we
simple.
had that homeowner, we had the condo association at the back of the property where there was fence trouble, right? Too? Or was that a
Unrelated
different-
issue?
that was a different site?
Unrelated
Okay.
issue.
All right.
But they did establish an access easement along the back, so it would allow both the town and individual property owners to walk along the perimeter. So maybe that addresses that issue.
Okay.
But Commissioner, I think that's the thing you were referring to was actually the same project at that time, and it was a year ago already. Because we haven't had any discussions, anything come before the Planning Commission or any of us since then related to Richfield Station.
Right. I am going to go back through those minutes because I
Okay.
feel like I know what I heard. I guess my concern is when we approve these things from the audience on that day, it seemed like it went very quick. And I just want to make sure that we are doing our due diligence to get the things we want. For instance, the 10% of open space required in the community. Do we know that calculation? I don't know if we do or not. I'm not trying to be a monkey wrench in this, and I know that
But what I would, I guess,
refer to the engineers here in this case, but going forward, I hope that we can.
what I would say to that is, again, this overall site development was planned and approved years ago. And so it would be improper, I think, at this point to try to levy new opens, to create, there's not room to create additional open space and things like that. I mean, this is the final build out. And so again, I think the being able to maybe make a park bench or two, I think is a good idea, but I want to get that added into I don't want to throw additional maintenance or anything to the homeowner association without having a conversation with them. And again, I think if they're good with it, that's fine. But there was going to be a building there. I mean, so if they didn't put the benches or anything else there in the fence, it would be just grass. And I don't think I think then if that's what the homeowner association would rather have, then we leave it up to them. But I think in my mind, it could go either way. And that's the condition I would love. I would want to see attached to Paul's letter as a condition.
Right.
I was prepared to add that as one of the conditions.
But I do want the homeowner to be, or the HOA to have some say in what that final configuration, and whether they think that's a good idea or something they just want us to walk on.
I would move that we accept the revision to the Richfield Station plat with the conditions as enumerated.
I would just want to let the developer.
Is
I'm
there
sorry,
anybody
the
else that
developer
wants to speak to this here?
Go ahead. Let me let the developer go, and then we'll have you come up. Sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Joe Devlin. On behalf of the applicant, Richfield Station Joint Venture, Mike Repke. I think Chris and Paul have pretty well summarized what's going on here in terms of making the change from the pump station to the whole house pumps. We think also that it's a prudent move for a variety of reasons that have been touched on. And it will enable us to be a little more efficient, a little quicker. We're hoping in terms of getting this thing up and running and in the ground. We were here in November of 2018. It's the last time we were here. And, at least in terms of the trail, the completion of the trail, the connection of the trail, that is part of this ending work. They're not part of which before you today, but it's because there's already agreements in place for that, et cetera, but it will be completed in conjunction with completing these last 48 townhouses there in Richfield Station. Beyond that, you have the plans, I believe you have the plans, et cetera. And again, I think they've already pretty well gone over it in terms of our request. We're just asking that the plat be revised. There's one plat that has to be revised because the pump station site previously on that plat is now an HOA area. We have the development plan, again, to note the change from pump station to whole house pumps there. And we have a landscaping plan that also, as part of the park, the landscaping has been adjusted to, again, take pump station and make it into this pocket park, as Mr. Jakubiak has called it. And we're happy to do that per the plan, per the design that's on this plan. If the HOA doesn't want it, then they don't want it. But we're not talking, I hope we're not talking about, and we're not intending to getting into a discussion or negotiation about what that park would include. What we're saying we'll do, we think is very reasonable for the space we're talking about per Mr. Jakubiak in our discussions. But again, if the HOA does not want to maintain that in its after condition, that certainly they can not want all those improvements. But that's up to them. We do think this is a prudent move for both parties in terms of moving this forward. In terms of some of the other issues you've talked about that we mentioned last year, we've been trying to get our PWAs issued to be able to get that on the schedule also of work to be done, because in conjunction with doing this last phase of townhouses, we also will put the top course on the street, check all the manholes, all that stuff that has to be done in this last section of Richfield Station. And I know Mr. Woodburn and I, we've been talking about that and trying to work with the town in terms of getting those PWAs reissued, as well as the PWA for this phase of work to allow us to go ahead and do the last 48 townhouses. Ryan Holmes is on board with the pump, the whole house pump concept. As Paul has said, it's done in a number of different places, and these are state of the art. And we think it's a good move for everybody, as I said. But Ryan's on board in terms of doing that also. So what we're trying to do, we were here a year ago. Unfortunately, we're not there in the ground yet. There's a whole lot of reasons for that aren't worth going into today. But we are ready, and certainly we think we now have the town consensus to be able to move this thing forward. And that's what we're intending to do is if we can get your approval tonight, we immediately move to getting all the documentation done and getting the plans approved. Paul and his group will be looking at the engineering plans for the whole house pumps, make sure they're designed correctly, et cetera. The products are what they want, and we certainly are ready to move on that. So unless you have any questions, we're just seeking your approval to make these changes, which are relatively minor in the greater scheme of things.
Thanks.
Chris, looks like-
So it's before you, technically, is to approve the revision to the plat that will show what was HOA area as park.
Right.
And that plat is dated 11/27/2019. There's a change to the landscaping plan, which I copied and pasted in your memo, which simply shows the red lines. And that's how that landscaping plan was amended when the lights were added in the street trees. And then there's a change to the development / grading site plan, which again, just shows the physical improvements that would be added in that area where the pump station is. It notes in red, you saw 4-board fence
Right.
and 2 benches.
Okay.
So those are the,
Improvements
for the
we're talking
record, I want to get that on the record.
Right.
Those are the things that actually changed.
Okay.
The technical drawings in terms of where the grinder pump and where the generator are located
With Paul.
and spaced on each of the individual lot or in the house. That's something that Paul and Jay are going to have to work at a very detailed level about, just like they would on any infrastructure improvement plan. So that's not before you,
Right.
but it's being prepared and being reviewed now by Paul.
Understand.
I have small copies of all that if you want them, but it seems like you have them
We do.
already, and I've already.
Thank you.
Paper, happy to give that to you.
Thanks.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the rules on grinder pumps. Is there any restrictions on how far away it has to be from the house? Is there sufficient room on the properties for this?
My understanding, and again, I defer to Paul, but Macron is our engineering company on the sewering of this project, and yes, they meet whatever requirements are there, including I know that there's distance issues between the house and the pump itself. There's distance with the generators vis-a-vis the pumps and the house, et cetera. So yes, I do believe that these plans do meet all those requirements, and that's part of what I guess Paul will be double checking and making sure that we do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did you get some comments?
I would just note, just as a courtesy, that last year we heard a whole lot of information from Mr. Morris on behalf of the association. And as a courtesy, I just want to make sure that there was a dispute between the HOA and the Richfield station that was resolved. But we certainly don't want to run into any problem tonight with that.
What times? Good evening, everybody. Greg Morris. I'm a resident of Richfield Station, 2425 Woodland Court. I'm also a current member of the Homeowners Association there. I've got to say, first and foremost, that I'm very disappointed to find out about this way. We have not heard of any decisions ever being made by this body that could affect and had no matter how small, financial burden, additional financial burden on the HOA. Also would like to say that there are many of these lift grinder pumps in Richfield Station currently. I think the original construction, there were, Mr. Repke knows, well, we both equally know at this time. And I'm sure the technology's come a long way. One question that I would ask, you come to the major cul-de-sac there and you make a left and you kind of drop down in, I think that's Crestview, I'm not sure, in the current development at the center. Are all of those townhomes down there, how are they draining their sewage right now? They're all on gravity there. Okay, wow, that's great. So further on down, it doesn't gravity feed. You can't make that work, I guess.
Yeah, so that's kind of like the cutoff, like where it stopped. Right now it's built.
Understood. Well, not having any time to reflect on this at all. Again, for the HOA to not be, I understand you're attaching some conditions, and that's good. I don't speak for the HOA board. It's something that we need to discuss. We discuss things collectively. Personally, if it's necessary, I guess it is. I would like to point out that somebody's saving money here. I know the town's saving money in the long run. I don't know if the developer is saving money. Maybe he's selling the lots cheaper to the builder, because the builder's the one that has to put the bill to build these things. I would say if the developer's saving money here, and maybe the town, we know this town's saving money here too, so we want the town's help. The property taxes collected in Richfield Station are very impressive, particularly when you factor in the density. The building is off the developer's plate, or the cost of having I guess I don't know how, I'm not an engineer, but the well that collects the sewer and then it pumps it out. I mean, it's expensive to do that. Getting out of having to do that, I'm going to make sure everybody understands the developer's getting out of having to do that, and they're saving money there. You know, some open space that the HOA's got to cut the grass. We know there's, besides this land that may transfer to the HOA. I've been associated with HOA for a long time. I know there's a lot of land that's still yet to transfer to the HOA. Eventually, it's going to. The developer does own, still owns, as far as I know, a significant amount of property around Richfield Station. There's a lack of play area, to say the least. You go to the field in Richfield Station, which the field is a blessing. People talk about building a pool and all this, and nobody's going to do any of that. The field really is a blessing. I don't know whose idea that was to put that in, but that's one of the best features that we have with so many, with a third of the community living in Richfield Station, and so many of those folks jammed into the back end of Richfield Station. All of the playground facilities really stop at the field and the courts there, and that's on the front end. I would like to talk about it with my colleagues on the HOA, but would like to see the town and or the developer put some kind of playground in and factor that in all of this somehow. I think we brought that up before. That was on a list, a wish list, if you will. Well, I don't want to get into. We know that they're in perpetuity. There are construction items that the town and the homeowners association have to contend with in perpetuity. I attribute a lot of that to a lack of inspection on the county and the towns up front. But I don't know. It's definitely a win-win for the town and the developer here. Just at first blush, those are really my only comments. I appreciate you attaching the condition to the HOA being able to review this. And I can promise this body and the developer, and I can only speak for myself here, that not holding anything hostage here. We're looking for equitability in this. We're looking for reasonability in all of it. Because frankly, Richfield Station's got the short end of the stick on a lot of fronts through the years. Some of this is town doing before any of us were here, before Jay was here. So again, I think I just want to emphasize that I would like the opportunity to develop a little better, develop some play area on that end of the community in conjunction with this development. Thank you.
Any other public comment regarding this issue? Thanks, Greg.
You ready?
So I have one more question.
Okay.
So, Rob's gonna propose that we approve this with conditions. What happens after that, or should we wait until we have something that is complete to review? I mean, is this how we're gonna always proceed? Are we always going to proceed in this other way?
So I would, and Chris, you can tell me, I would like to proceed with a recommendation. So I think I'd like to I think there's two issues and they're separate issues in my mind. I think we should, it depends on how you all make the motion, but what I would suggest to the body is we decide if we think it's appropriate or not appropriate to convert from the pump station to the grinder pump. I think the condition then would be what that final configuration of that area looks like in the back, and that's where we would have some. If the homeowner, it would just turn into regular open space. If where that pump station was, it would be converted to just graded adequately for proper drainage and everything else, and that's what it would be if the homeowners association didn't want to have us incorporate some sort of a fence and bench and whatever Chris has detailed, the landscaping that Chris has detailed on this plan. Because so I think that's really what's at issue in my mind.
I would, just for purposes of, in terms of my thoughts on that, in terms of that, I think that you're correct that the way that Mr. Gray has styled it, and I think it's correct, is that we're, number one, looking to approve the plat, the development plan revisions, landscaping plan revisions to, number one, accommodate the change to whole house pumps. Number two is that we're proposing, per Mr. Jakubiak's recommendation, to turn the HOA area, which the HOA area currently has a pump station on it. So we're basically taking that HOA area and taking a pump station off it. What Chris has suggested is put in this amenity area, if you will, this tot lot area, the benches, in place of that. And we're fine with that. If the HOA doesn't want it, then it would just become HOA area, correct?
And
that's the way to
so to
approach it.
answer Lori's question, then I think I would allow that final resolution of how that area gets settled would rest with Chris because he's in discussion. He has more frequent discussions with the homeowners association. And you can work through that on a whatever timescale you need to. That's not something that would have to be decided in the next 2 weeks or anything of how that gets resolved. And that way it would allow the homeowners association enough time to have discussions at their meetings and work with Chris on the resolution of that matter.
Right, but the condition would be,
Right.
We're approving this, subject to the HOA approving
Yes.
that configuration.
But I will let's let somebody propose a motion to, so we can then have a vote on it.
Okay, I would move that we approve the revisions to the plat, grading, and site plan and landscape plans on the following conditions as enumerated in the letter of November 12th, 2019, from Bendire and Associates to Mr. Jakubiak, listing 6 conditions in that letter with the modification of the 4th condition, which in its current proposal reads, the area of the original town pump station shall be nicely landscaped and approved by the zoning administrator for dedication to the HOA. I would modify that to read, the area of the original town pump station shall be nicely landscaped and approved by the zoning administrator for dedication to the HOA, and an indication to the satisfaction of the zoning administrator that the homeowners association concurs with that landscaping.
There a second?
A second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. So you'll work on revising the plat and then submitting it for signature? Chris, is that like we do all the other, so it'll get revised and submitted for signature?
Yep, it'll be revised with Paul's oversight to make sure that
The other thing I would add.
easements are.
The other thing I would ask
Yep.
is just as you have discussions with the homeowners association, if you could report that to the commission, just so we as a body are aware of this, how that's progressing, and that we understand what that final configuration will be. And so as it's moving forward, we just understand where that is.
Very good. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you all. Next on the agenda is to review and act on a subdivision plat for 3906 27th Street. Chris, do you want to present anything before the applicant does?
Yeah, I just briefly, and the applicant is represented by Bill Watson, who knows the town very well, and of course you know Bill, many of you do. This is a subdivision plat. It's a minor subdivision. It creates two lots out of one. And right now the lot that exists extends between two public streets, 27th, 28th, and they would add a new line that would separate the two into two lots, creating one lot that could be built on in the future. The house would remain on a lot. I sent the staff memo to you, as you recall. The only thing I'd highlight is I made a mistake when I said that the minimum lot width in this zoning district is 60 feet. It's actually 50 feet. So they're providing lots that are 60 foot wide, and the minimum is 50. In all other respects, the subdivision complies with the zoning regulations and subdivision regulations as well.
The applicant here to speak.
The applicant is, and her representative, Mr. Watson.
All right.
Good evening. Some familiar faces, some not so familiar. When I was first asked to take this project on by Ms. Harbison, I remembered that many, many years ago when I was still working for the town as Chris's predecessor as zoning administrator, the prior owner came to me asking about the possibility of a storm drain line that he didn't know whether it did or did not run through this lot. And I could not find any indication either in the field or in any of the, at that time, rather haphazard records that would indicate whether there was a storm drain there. I did some research into the land records, found no easement. So this plan has probably been overdone because of trying to identify the existing storm drain system that does in fact go through this lot, and to determine whether there's any problems with it that would need to have it relocated or to have it reconstructed. I believe that neither of those two alternatives are necessary. It doesn't need to be relocated, doesn't need to be relocated or reconstructed. It seems to be in good condition. All the pipe from this lot, which starts at D Street through this lot down to 28th and on out to the bay is all concrete pipe. Seems to be in pretty good condition. So what we have proposed, and I have a small handout as a supplement to the overall plan, is a slight revision per Paul's request to have along the eastern property line of the vacant lot, Lot 4R, a 5-foot storm drain easement, which would be, when combined with an existing 10-foot easement, the normal 15-foot easement to be able to allow people to get in with equipment and work on it. Also per Paul, I've added a 10-foot easement to be private, privately owned, privately maintained, running from the vacant lot through the house lot to 27th Street. This is for, as we've just heard, a lot of discussions about grinder pumps. This lot sits low. There is no sewer on 28th Street. The nearest sewer is at either the intersection of D Street, which is roughly 100 feet away, or go the opposite direction towards Bayside Road, and there's a now abandoned alley where there's a sewer manhole at the top of a hill. Either of those routes would require running a force main, mostly within the town right-of-way, to get into either of the two manholes. That puts, in my opinion, an unnecessary burden on the town. The third alternative is the one that I have focused on, which is to run a small force main, 1 inch probably, from the vacant lot through the house lot out to 27th Street. It would be built by the builder of the new home that would eventually go on this proposed lot. It would be maintained by that person. There would be adequate notes, which I have proposed on this handout, that talk about the fact that it is private, not to be maintained by the town, that there will be a backup power generator, that any disturbance to maintain it will be put back to its original condition by the owner of the new lot, trying to protect both parties as best as possible. Now, there's some discussion, and I believe Paul and Chris and I will come to a reasonable resolution on it, of how to connect to the sewer in 27th Street. There's two alternatives. Go straight into it, have the force main come to the property line, put a clean out on it, have a watertight fitting that the force main connects to the clean out, and then at that point gravity 5 or 6 feet into the sewer line, which is a 6-inch PVC line. The other alternative, which I'm not excited about, would be to turn and head towards the manhole that's about 75 to 85 feet away, if I remember correctly now. That's at the intersection of an existing open alley with 27th Street, and then just core the force main into that manhole. Because of the curbing, sidewalk, and pavement that's along this route in 27th Street, it could get expensive, and I haven't studied the cost involved, but I'm guessing that the more economical way could possibly turn out to be to do a directional bore. And that is an expensive proposition. But tearing up this much pavement, the sewer line is about 9 feet deep, 8 or 9 feet deep, is going to be rather disruptive to 27th Street in and of itself. So this is where the discussions between Paul and Chris and I are proposed to try to come to a resolution. I anticipate that happening when we get to the point in time of requesting a building permit for this lot. So with that, I'll be quiet and see if any member has a question of me.
I have several questions,
Sure.
Mr. Watson. Just some clarification of your desk handout that you've given us, which is this document. There appears to be on the southwest side of proposed Lot 4R, on the outside of that lot, a crosshatched section. You see where I'm referring?
On the southwest corner of 4R?
Well, right, on a crosshatched section outside of the lot line there. Is that
Oh,
north?
Northeast.
Oh,
I'm
that's,
sorry.
okay, I'm looking at the arrow pointing in the wrong direction. That's the
Mr. Gray,
northeast,
You've been in
okay.
this business long enough.
All right. What is that
That is
crosshatch?
the existing storm drain easement that's 10 feet in wide that I was alluding to, that Paul has requested we add an additional 5 feet so that the two give us a total of 15-foot width.
So the additional 5 feet is interior to the proposed lot 4R?
Correct.
Okay. Then there, in what it will become the new lot 16, it looks like 16R,
Yes.
there you have a proposed 10-foot private sewer easement. Is that already existing?
No.
That sewer easement appears to be encroached by the existing dwelling. Is that correct?
No, sir. The existing dwelling,
Is
well, first off, here's the route of the proposed sewer easement, force main easement,
right.
and it runs adjacent to and just inside of the lot at its eastern boundary. The existing house that's on this lot,
Oh, I'm seeing. Oh, I see. That's the encroaching on the building line restriction, not on the
that's
house.
correct, on the
Okay.
BRL.
That's what I was concerned about.
So what was that line, existing restriction you're saying?
The building restriction line. I said BRL, but it's a building restriction line.
Okay, so
That's a measure of
that's
8
basically a rectangle in the middle of the lot.
That's
It
showing the
leaves a
town
buildable
setbacks.
rectangle, yes,
Okay.
sir.
Then on the proposed lot 4R, there appears to be a diagonal storm drain easement going through that.
Yes, sir.
Would there be any construction within that storm drain easement or on the south side of that storm?
Possibly on the south side. I will admit that I've been busy the past couple of days, and even though Ms. Harbison has sent me a draft layout for the size and location of the house and a possibility, at least previous layout, had a detached garage. And the detached garage would fit inside this triangular area to the south side of the storm drain easement. And the proposed house would fit between the storm drain easement and 28th Street.
So there is sufficient room for a building envelope between the proposed storm drain easement within the existing building line restriction?
It would be a small building, but yes, sir.
Is there a setback requirement under the zoning ordinance off of the proposed storm drain easement encroaching into that proposed building envelope?
None that I'm aware of, although in my former days, anytime a storm drain easement was proposed and it was inside of the building restriction or the building envelope, I would make the developer put a note on there that no permanent structures to be erected within that storm drain easement. Else, if the town has to come in and tear something down to maintain the storm drain easement, you got to replace it yourself. And I've had that discussion with my client also.
That's my concern, is that if there is a construction of a new home in lot 4R, whether there would be a setback requirement from that storm drain easement just for that purposes. Is that proposed, or are you proposing to have a setback from that or not?
Given that I haven't had the opportunity to load her drawing up and take a look-see as to what she's suggesting to me, the best that I can say is that 15 feet normally is adequate for maintenance of existing utilities within an easement. I don't think that on the corner of the house, which would be the southeasternmost corner, or the one closest to the area where I was just mentioning a garage, small garage could go, that's going to set the tone as to where the house can be set on the lot. In other words, since the easement is coming on a diagonal, the proposed house cannot go back much further unless it has some interesting alignment changes in the rear of it to be any closer to the easement than where I have my finger pointed, and that's where the easement intersects the B in the BRL on the drawing.
But if their proposal is to have some sort of structure in the southern part of the proposed new lot on the opposite side of the drainage easement, how would access to that structure would have to cross over the storm drainage easement?
Yes, sir, and that's not an unusual situation.
Okay.
And it would, if it is in fact going to be a garage back there, earlier rendition that my client provided did show a driveway going back.
Okay, so the driveway would not impact on the utility of that easement?
Not a bit. That would be if somebody had to dig the storm drain up, the driveway would be impacted and the owner would have to put it back themselves.
Those were the only questions I had.
Are the adjacent lots similarly subdivided?
There's mostly ownership of lot 1 and lot 2, lot 3, lot 4, lot 5, lot 6, but not replatted to combine them into a lot 4R type configuration.
So you're saying the lots adjacent east and west of this lot extend from 27th to 28th Street?
No, and I apologize, I forgot to mention, there's an old alley that runs between the two halves. You see a dotted line that runs more or less midway down the page, and then a solid line just down the page from that. The solid line is the proposed rear of lot 16. The dotted line follows the center or follows the northern side of the former alley. That entire alley through that block has been abandoned and deeded out to the property owners. I seem to remember it was back in the 70s. And that really is what's enabled to do this configuration and hopefully not have the storm drain system that's out there disrupt something. If the alley hadn't been abandoned, setback lines may have had to move, and I'm not sure at this stage of the game, since I haven't tried to exercise myself with that, not sure whether I'd have been able to do anything without having to move the storm drain.
The single lot is what appears on the current plat. Is that correct?
The current record plat
Yeah.
was recorded
Plat of record.
in probably the 1940s, and it's just a string of 30 by 100 lots with a 15-foot alley in behind and 50-foot rights of way on either side. Typical cookie cutter layout per the old way of doing things before any zoning came along in Chesapeake Beach.
So do we need to change that plat, or does that plat, not we change it, but someone need to change that plat?
In essence, that's what this project will do.
Right, but so to construct what the plat is as it exists now would require going through all the little changes, and I mean there is no consolidated plat showing all the changes that have been made to it.
No, sir. The closest thing that's available is just public records. Calvert County maintains a GIS system, and once this goes to record, the lot lines on the GIS system will be revised to show two lots with no dividing line forming one lot. But to go back and change the original record plat would be unnecessary. This plat will have notes on it to the effect that all the conditions of the previous plat, the one from the 1940s, are continued to be in effect on these lots, which there weren't any conditions, but that's a standard phrase that we use on these types of drawings. And citation is made of where that plat is recorded in the plat records of the county. I think those are the two most pertinent aspects of relating to the old plat. Then it's just a matter of when the land records gets this for recordation, eventually it makes it through a process where it's indexed within the land records, making it easy to find. If, for example, you want to look up middle subdivision, all the plats relative to middle subdivision come up. This would be one of them at such time as it's been recorded.
And the sewer for the properties on 27th and 28th Street, where's the main sewer line that these properties feed into from on 27th and 28th Street?
On 27th, there's a sewer line that basically runs such that each lot that fronts 27th can go directly into the public sewer. And that's a 6-inch PVC line. On 28th Street, there's one house to the left on this drawing or to the west that I'm not sure where it goes, whether it taps into something that's in D Street or goes directly into the manhole that's at D and 28th. The house to the east of this lot is where I made mention in the discussion relative to where to go with the proposed sewer. There's a manhole that's on the crest of a hill between the adjacent lot and that of Greg Shelton, for those of you that may know Greg. And that is in a location where both Greg's house, the brick house that he owns, as well as the house that is on the adjacent lot to this site, both go out the ends of the house into that manhole or to the line. I'm not sure where they actually tap, but I see evidence of them heading towards that line. So none of the properties on 27th Street have sewer access into 27th. On the north side of 27th, there's a recent, within the last couple of years, replatting that was done. There was an old house at the corner of 28th Street and D. It's an old house at the corner that was in pretty bad shape. Through code enforcement, which I also did, one of the heirs to the owner, I convinced, get in the development game, plat it. You got something saleable. They went ahead and had a local firm do that. They are sewered to the rear, where there is a sewer line in the alley to the north of these lots on the north side of 28th Street.
All my questions.
I guess my questions revolve around, so right now we're just approving the lot, the subdivision of the lot, is that correct? Not these plans with the sewer? Are they involved here?
Yeah, so the discussion about the easements, sewer easements, and the storm drain, yes, they're germane to this plat because we want them on the plat. The question about how it's technically connected to a sewer system in 27th Street is beyond the scope of anybody in this room right now. It's gonna be Paul and
It'd be resolved at the time for the building permit.
figuring that out and making that judgment. That will have to be resolved though when they come in with a proposal for a house, because we won't issue a permit unless we know it's proven that it can connect. But it is clear that it would be coming off of 27th Street through this easement over lot 16R to the rear of 14R.
So I guess just in general, I would like to know, and this is just for process, I don't have a preference one way or another, whether this is subdivided stuff, you just humor me. It's the process question. Say, what would be our legal obligation to approve, and what would be our legal obligation? What will we be considering if we were going to disapprove this subdivision? Like, it seems to me like this area is zoned a certain way, and you would have to allow what is allowed. So I'm not really understanding what is in dispute here. Like,
There's no dispute, but
Or
in
to consider, what is to consider?
in the way that in American law we do planning and real estate transactions is that a property has to be legal, and it has to be of record, and you do that by recording it in the land records, and that the applicant's taking advantage of what the code allows, in this case to have two lots in place of one, because both meet the minimum requirements. So it has to be approved by the planning commission, which is the body established to approve a plat before it can be recorded in the land record. So you can't sell that new lot unless the planning commission approves it and gets recorded. So that's why we're here.
Right, but we really either can't or shouldn't disapprove it for any reason. Because it meets the current ordinance.
This
Is that
particular
correct?
case does meet the ordinance, and it meets the other relevant factors that you might consider. But you can imagine a situation where even a minor subdivision would not comply with those
This one
factors, but This one
does.
certainly does, yes.
We're effectively approving a second house on that property. We're increasing the density in that neighborhood.
Yeah, by one house,
And it meets the density requirements.
yes.
And if we wanted those density requirements to be different, we would need to change our comprehensive plan. Correct?
Yeah,
we'd have to
Otherwise,
change our
we
zoning-
are
we'd have to change our
obligated to
zoning
approve
map.
it. Well, I mean, obviously we can't now. He's before us now, so
Right.
we're approving based on the current ordinance, which I can't see any reason to disapprove.
Mr. Watson, Larry raised an issue that I was not aware of, and I'm not sure that I understand it completely, concerning the location of the old alley in the original Chesapeake Beach plat. Could you describe where that alley is or was?
If I may.
Sure.
And may I just add that the planning commission members might want to open up the larger plan sheets, because you can see it clearer on that, because it shows all the neighborhood. So we might want to use this. Is that the option? We did a really good job preparing these plans, so we might want
It splits the property.
The bank, it did.
Well, I mean,
Three or four. What we have on the sheet 3 or 4, more or less in the center of the upper right corner, dark heavy line, which represents the outline of the property that's owned by Ms. Harbison. A solid line that runs from one side of that outer perimeter to the other, which divides the parcels in two. And that solid line from it, the one going from side to side, just up from it is a dotted line, which represents the former northern right-of-way line of the now abandoned alley.
Okay, so it's from the dotted line south to the proposed new dark line.
Correct.
Okay. So that is all going to be located south of the proposed stormwater easement.
Yes, sir.
The reason that I raised that, and I know Chris and I have talked about this at our last meeting that I attended, was particularly in light of what you said, that you put a plat note saying all conditions continue from the old plat. How do you handle the implied right of use of that alleyway to all the other plat owners?
By the virtue that the town took formal abandonment procedures, advertised it, abandoned it by ordinance.
I'm not talking about the town's interest in it. I'm talking about the other lot owners' interest in it. The town, and I'm distinguishing fee ownership from right of use. The town abandoned its right to use it, but the right of the other lot owners within the subdivision, there's an implied easement of use for everyone else to use it also. How do you address that in putting a structure within that right of way?
Well, there's no structure going within that area other than the sewer force main crossing it. First, I've never seen that tested in court. Perhaps you've had opportunity to test that. in
Your
court.
old employer, Harry Sturdivant, was a named party to a case decided by the circuit court
Really?
saying that, yes.
And what was the
That was the
decision?
decision was that a property owner attempted to erect a fence prohibiting access across a platted right-of-way. The court upheld it based on Klein versus Dove, saying that you cannot obstruct the public's use of that. There's an implied easement of use for the general public over a platted right-of-way.
Learn something new every day.
Right.
My fallback position, and I admit that I'm arguing with somebody that's more knowledgeable on this than I am, again, was that it was properly advertised.
Right. And that's no question about that. The
And it's
town
not
has given up
currently
its
being
interest.
used.
No, there's fences
that has something
all
to do
over
with
the
it.
place out there. Everybody's fenced off the part that they got. So they've already, by acquiescence, abandoned their rights to want to make use of even a pedestrian walkway in this alley.
Well, I think I can maybe we were talking about something in theory, but not practical. The alleyway is outside of the proposed building line restriction anyway, correct?
That's correct.
All right, so there could be no structure within that alleyway anyway.
That's correct.
So my concern that we would be placing a structure on top of the old alleyway is unfounded.
Point of fact, though, you could have a shed within that area.
Mhm.
Shed could be as close as 5 feet
5
to the
feet.
rear property line.
Or you could build a 12-story structure there until somebody challenges it.
Then tear it down.
Other
Jonathan, do you have any
questions?
questions?
I'm good. I think it meets all the requirements, like you said.
Chris?
Just one thing, Bill, the plat will abandon the line that separated lots 3 and 4 and 15 and 16.
Yes,
The
but-
dashed line.
That dotted line represents the abandoned lot line, or the lot line to be abandoned. But until this plat is recorded, the abandonment of that lot line doesn't occur. So it needs to be shown so that it can be brought to attention of anybody reviewing this plat 100 years from now, that it had been abandoned.
Any other public comment? No. Is there a motion to,
I've just,
or do you have more questions?
well, I'm just still concerned about the setback off of the proposed storm drainage easement. Does the town require that, Chris?
No, we don't. There's no setback off the easement. It's presumed that the easement itself is the setback from the pipe. And if it's wide enough and engineer thinks 15 feet is more than adequate, then we wouldn't.
Okay, so if we put a condition on the plat saying no structure can be erected within that proposed storm drainage easement,
I think
we should
that's-
be,
Yeah, that's implied, and I think it's better to have the language. In fact, Bill even conceded that earlier, and I think that would be important.
okay.
I don't think that
Addition to this
creates
plat.
any problems.
I mean, that's in fact what we do, and that basically signals to the owner. and actually
Can't
it
build
helps
on top
me
of
When
it.
they come in with a proposal that shows a shed in the easement, I could point to their note rather
Right.
than explaining what an easement is. I also would suggest that it's a proposed 15-foot town stormwater easement, so that it's clear that the town is the beneficiary of the easement.
15 or 50?
15,
I
not
think you said 50.
Oh, I'm at 15.
I heard 50. I just want to make sure, in case anybody else heard 50, I want to make sure we said
On
15.
your property.
Traditionally, just to reinforce what Chris just said, traditionally, the town, until I'm going to say the modern era of subdivisions being since 1972, when we got zoning regulations, never got easements. This was built, I think, in the 70s, and the mayor in charge at the time was a rather lax person when it came to following through on getting deeds and easements and so on for stuff that got done by the town. I've searched high and low through the land records, and this is the only storm drain easement in this area relative to this system that I could find. And while I'm not expert at title abstract work, I just wasn't able to find anything. It would be my intent and recommendation to the client that not only the 15-foot storm drain easement, but the additional 5, not only be labeled as being to the benefit of the town, but that we, at the appropriate time, do an instrument granting the use of that easement to the town, so that it closes that loop that in previous years has not been closed very well.
As a practical matter, when the plat is final and needs to be signed, Alyssa LeBand gets the agreement, certifies its accuracy. And go from there.
Is there a motion to take action on this?
I'd move that we
Right.
approve the subdivision of what,
3906.
at the
Sub
number
Street.
3906 with the following conditions: that the plat contain a note stating that there shall be no structure erected within the 15-foot proposed storm drain easement or within the 5-foot storm drain easement, and that the owner convey a right of use of those easements to the town of Chesapeake Beach with the existing notes that are also contained on the subdivision plat.
There a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Congratulations.
Thank you, folks.
Good luck
Thank you.
on the next step. It gets harder from here. Thanks for all the explanation, Bill. With that, the next item on the agenda for tonight is public comment. Is there any other public comment? Seeing none, hearing none. I'll open it up to any comments from our commissioners. Jonathan, do you have anything?
You got a lot to learn.
Lori?
So I feel that in the future, developers should be fully prepared with a complete plat of everything that we need to consider. I'm not as versed as you guys are, so there's lots of little details in a plat. I don't know, other than the different grinders, which aren't even all on the plat that they submitted in the different houses. I saw no grading lines. I saw, I could not see their plan. I deferred to people that are in construction and legal that are, better at this. But I feel like a lot of things
And I think if I could,
through very whimsically.
I think in that regard, the plat, because we were only considering the change from the pump house to the grinder pump, there wasn't a lot of other, there wasn't other stuff that was before us to review and consider because the plat had been approved
No, he did great. See, he brought us this.
No, I know, but I'm just saying the plat for Richfield Station was that those had all been approved. It was only a modification to a previously approved plat for all those subdivision lots, and that's why there wasn't additional discussion about grading and things like that that really needed to be, that were really before us for consideration. So I didn't have a higher expectation to see significantly more detail than what they provided for our ability to review and consider the change from a pump station to individual grinder pumps. Is my feeling. I don't know if.
Well, from my perspective, having never seen the plot, right?
Right.
I don't know what else changed on it. I can't
No, but Chris's staff report told us the only reason they came before us was for that, and so that's why I didn't look for any additional information. I mean,
but as a matter of policy, if we're doing a revision, it's a revision. So I feel like the people that are asking for a revision have to supply before and after, because that's the only way to evaluate it.
Well, I
I'm
thought
not-
what
I'm
was
not-
provided did
what-
show the before and after
Yeah.
on it. It did show all of that information on the documents that
It was
were
in small
provided.
detail, but we didn't have full-size plans.
We didn't
but-
have the full-size plan,
Right.
but those are online.
Yeah, we made sure that they submitted the plans that showed that, and the documents we sent in the email showed that. And he, at my direction, brought plans tonight to hand out, and he offered them to you. But again, the changes were specifically related to what happens to that open space. There is nothing to be seen about change from a pump station to grinder pumps.
And we weren't
plan.
changing sidewalk location, we weren't changing elevations of the
It is.
site
Like,
or.
there's a lot of stuff in the yard. Like I have a propane tank, a grinder pump. These are little townhouses. And there's stuff to see. There is. And I think a developer of that size can provide.
But we wouldn't see the generator location and things like that we wouldn't see the location of the generator on a plat. That wouldn't be information that's contained on the plat. That would be on their construction documents, not the
Right.
plat. The plat's simply containing any easements or other things related to the site-specific lot.
Right.
So I mean, those are the details, what I think is what you'd see in the construction documents if you were building that site out.
Yeah, and I took everybody's word for it that that was the only thing to see. And I had to take everybody's word for it. A plot large enough to see, and I'm willing to take your word for it. But I don't think it's too much to ask to say, hey, you're doing a revision. Provide us both plans. Right?
Yeah.
Don't you think?
I
I think
I think
each
what they provided-
situation is going to be different.
I think it
Take
depends on
each
the
one.
magnitude of the change, to be
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah.
Right?
I go back to what was given to us did show the before and it did show the after.
I was able to see that about the pump station being gone.
Right.
Any other details I wouldn't have seen, but
What other details were there?
I don't know because they did mention there's, grading of the park.
But we typically we don't review for the grading plan. That's all done on the construction document level. The grading of any of those lots, we don't review from a zoning perspective. That's part of the grading zone, the
We
grading.
would have
and-
done that, the planning
during the
commission would
permitting
have done that
process.
at the time of final plat approval, which was years ago. And at that point, the planning commission would have seen the lot configurations, the grading, the contour lines, would have seen the grading permits.
all the BRLs or.
That would have been on the original documents that we had already approved.
Right. And so when you do a revision, how would you know if they changed?
Because what was changed was given to us.
With Chris's review, I mean, and that's,
And not only that, the town engineer and town public works director and the town manager, we came to you presenting that we're acting above board and candidly and presenting the changes that
I'm not-
required. We have to move through the process in a way that allows you to make the decisions that are necessary, but not to be tied up in discussing the location of a generator on a townhouse lot that will be determined by the engineers. But the question is whether, from a policy standpoint, will the planning commission feel it's in the town's interest to shift to this different way of providing sewer service? That was the question. And in fact, the applicant preferred to do that administratively without coming to the planning commission, but I insisted that was a matter that, since you were the approving authority, that you should weigh in on that question. So this was brought to you when many jurisdictions would never come back to the planning commission.
we appreciate you bringing it to us.
Yeah, thank you.
You have some other comments, Lori? I didn't want to cut you off.
No, I'm not trying to be argumentative. It's just, I detected a little bit of frustration from somebody in the audience, and
But-
I would also like us to understand what the viewpoint of our council members are. I mean, we did spend 2 whole entire months going over a sewer manual that represented their intent. And I honestly, I listened to everybody, and by him saying that, town is what made me say, okay to approve this.
And I don't think
But
there's anything.
I would like to know that going into some of this stuff. I don't want to be approving things that are not in somebody else's
Well, and again,
intent.
and Paul was heavily involved in the right. Paul Woodburn was heavily involved in the writing of that sewer manual, and would not if he thought it was contradictory to the sewer manual. And I agree with him. I don't think there's any part of us switching to a grinder pump in Richfield Station on those 48 townhomes in any way contradicts or invalidates the draft language of the stormwater or the
Sure, and I was
stormwater
reassured.
manual.
I'm glad
You know,
I was here. So I
right,
felt
right.
reassured
No,
by
and
that.
Chris and I talked, and we wanted to make sure Paul was here to represent the town's engineering interest in this matter, because again, I had some questions in my head originally of what's the benefit to the town, because again, I think that was an important part of this process is what happens to the town and how are they impacted, good or bad, by that decision to switch, because we had allowed a pump station previously. Why? What's in it for me before, what's in it for the town? When I say me, what's in it for the town before we're going to make that switch? And I think they made a compelling case for it. And I think I was comfortable, and I think
Well,
we,
we're all comfortable.
yeah,
We
yeah.
approved it.
no. So I mean, I think that was a good, I think it was a
I don't
worthwhile
think it was a bad
discussion.
decision. I would have said no if I
Right.
didn't
Oh,
have enough reassuring
Don't doubt
factors.
So-
Right. I'm just saying, there's going to be a lot of things before us. There's a lot of things that I would like to spend more time looking. I mean, we are decision making. I know there's experts here, and I know there's and I know we have, different people with experience, and I'm happy to lean on all of that. But it's not really, for instance, with the comprehensive plan, it's not fair to send it to us in advance and expect us to move on it. And I would even like to have more comprehensive discussions, possibly, a closed door session if that's allowed.
Can't do that.
Something to just from
I mean,
a policy
you could
perspective,
you
how
could
are we going to go about doing
You
this?
could have an
Because-
individual discussion with the town engineer about issues like that, but we couldn't convene the body without having it as an open session.
So what is our recourse though? So Chris presents a plan, and he's been I like the new plans, but I know we're going to get back to that land use plan. How do we discuss that? How do we make our edits? How do we find out what the council's thinking? What are we going to do to find out what the town people are thinking in regards to that land use plan? Because that's,
So I think there'll be more outreach as we come out of the new year.
okay.
As Chris starts to draft some other stuff, there'll be some more public outreach sessions that will probably be at the Northeast Community Center. And then there'll be also, at some point, we'll continue to invite town council members to our meeting, but at some point we will also float a draft to the town council for their review. And then, again, there's public hearing requirements that to be open for public, even after we propose a draft.
I know
There's
a time period where it has
60-day
to go
open
out.
public comment periods, both in the draft stage and the final stages. And so there's going to be lots of opportunities that as that moves forward and it starts to get tighter and from a language and incorporation perspective. But I mean, we're far off from.
No, I know.
being
We
ready
haven't
to
even
adopt
got to the
anything.
ordinance. I mean,
Oh, well,
or
that's-
the different
that's-
areas.
But that's after the comprehensive plan is adopted. I mean, that won't come as part of the comprehensive plan. The change in the zoning ordinance would not come until after the comprehensive plan is adopted.
Or,
Go to the state.
And then you would start.
well, so North Beach just approved something where they can negotiate with these developers to get what they want in their town. It's some wording or some,
Development agreement.
right, some kind of something, and I would like to see us do something like that.
That's
So-
part of the zoning ordinance but we're not at that stage for zoning ordinance in action. But certainly development agreements can be part of a zoning ordinance.
Right,
Although a lot of people will object to that, saying we're cutting deals to our favorite people by entering into agreements.
yeah, so those are the types of things that we could prepare for if we knew our agenda items further in advance, or if we knew our discussion points, even agenda broken down more, more detailed. I just like get so much so late, and then this is what we get to do. And I would like to actually work on it in a substantial way, however you say that word. And I feel like it's very hard to do that.
No comment.
I do like your festive tie. I forgot to tell you that.
Thank you.
I told you privately. I didn't tell everyone that I appreciate your festive tie. It put me in a good mood tonight.
Well, if you'd like to have another meeting next week, I have another tie.
That's okay.
I was going to wear my ugly Christmas sweater, but I decided not to.
Were you worried about being on TV?
I have a couple comments.
Okay.
Again, Jonathan, welcome aboard. Couple suggestions for you. We have a Dropbox system that I'm not sure if anybody's told you about, that you probably need to talk with Chris or Fran about the availability of documents. Chris will send out documents to us in our Dropbox on our computer. So hopefully you'll get set up with that. The other thing that I was unaware of until substantially into my first year is that all new members of the Planning Commission have to take a planning course. And it's online with this Maryland State Department of Planning. It's a relatively easy thing. It takes a couple hours of listening to watching videos, and then you take a test. If you get a question wrong, they'll send you back and say, read this again, and then you take the test. Real simple, but Fran can hook you up with how to go about getting that. I think you have to do that within the first year or so.
And related to that, there's in the summer and the fall, the Maryland Municipal League has a conference, and it happens in July or August over in Ocean City. It's a couple-day event, but they typically offer that planning course as one of the one of the breakout sessions over there, if that's something you would be interested in too. And it's probably worth, taking it online is good. You can meet some contacts over there if you have the availability to go to the MML.
No, that's fine. I'd like to follow up with what Lori was saying. I think she makes a good point about getting documents to us in a timely fashion, particularly if we're looking at plats. It takes time to do that. And I'm just wondering, Chris, if all of the information that is sent out to us, is that publicly available to the community at large at the same time?
Well, we've never actually made it publicly available in any notice standpoint, but all the staff reports and everything are here at the town hall. So when there is a notice requirement, we make sure people know that it's available at the town hall. So it is in effect a public document.
What I was following through with Lori's concerned about public being aware of what we're doing and getting public input.
Right.
If we can have some sort of mechanism available that what the public at least has the opportunity, whether they avail themselves of it or not is a separate issue, but have the availability to look at the documents that we get, and if they have comments, that would give them an opportunity to comment also on that. So if that's an option, I'd like to be able to explore that.
Related to that, I'll just add one quick note. So I know one of the initiatives the town council has been working on is revamping our town's website. And Holly is really strong in a lot of different areas, one of them being the whole GIS and the development of this website and making it user-friendly, and some other things that I think were a bit antiquated. And I'm not a software IT guy, but I would agree we don't have the most efficient and intuitive website from a town perspective. Holly is working on that with members of town council, and I think they have some draft websites that, I think they are working on an offline model to try to have some user testing stuff. And I think maybe in that new model, there may be a way to better link to some of the documents that we would receive, and that might be a better way to make them available to any interested.
Now, there may be at some point some documents that we receive that are confidential, which couldn't be there.
Right.
But if there are publicly available documents, if there's a way for the public to access them, but again, I say just give them the opportunity. If they avail themselves, that's fine. If not, that's fine.
It's a great idea. And when it comes to receiving development plans and getting them onto your agenda, we could require that they arrive for acceptance at least a month or so before, so that we have time to coordinate with agencies and do reviews before they even come to you. And that gives the time that, it would just be a somewhat of a delay on the part of the applicant, but still it would give us time to get the staff reports out to you weeks in advance of any application. But yeah, the new website, and it is, at least there's a pretty good beta up. It looks fantastic. The website does allow us to do what Jeff is referring to, is make more documents available. So yeah, we like to build on that. Yes.
Those are my only comments.
Right.
Any other comments from anybody? So I have one last one I'm going to offer up tonight. And so for those of you who aren't aware, Chris is aware, this is going to be my last meeting as chairman of Planning and Zoning. I sent a note to the mayor earlier this week expressing my need to resign from the Planning and Zoning. It's a personal and professional need, I guess. Personal, I need to keep my job. I just, some of the responsibilities I have at work are increasing, and I've been trying to work through this, and it's just with the challenge of the comprehensive plan and some of the other things that are coming on, I just don't have the personal time to commit to planning and zoning. And I have some healthcare issues with my father. I'm trying to work remotely, and that doesn't always go so well. So I indicated to the mayor that I'm going to be stepping down after as of next week. And I just want to tell you all thanks for, even you, Jonathan, for the night that we had together. I really appreciate all the hard work. And again, clearly we have a group of folks who are dedicated to the town and care deeply about the town. And that's what the town needs. And I know it's in good hands as I leave here, and I won't be far. I won't be as many meetings. I may still pop in every now and then. But I just felt the need. I needed to step down and kind of focus on my work and some things at home. And so I'm going to miss you guys and gals.
Well, we're disappointed that this doesn't pay enough
It does
to
not
compensate you for your time, but it's going to be a huge hole to fill, huge gap.
So I will work with, I will work with the mayor. I'm not sure exactly how he's going to make, just what the selection, how that will go as far as his appointment of a new chairman. And we never did fill the vice chairman from when they snagged Charlie from us. So stand by between now and the end of January. I'm sure there'll be some other communication between the mayor and in you folks. So, in that, I will miss you guys and good luck. And I'm sure I'll see y'all around town. I'm never far. With that, is there a motion to adjourn the meeting? Second? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Meeting from December 11th is adjourned. Thank you.
I ran you off. Yeah. That's what a booming economy does to the